one by one, meaning like interpersonally with like, if you're
Mm.
talking about one person, I mean, it's going to be hard, but there's people like researchers like Stephen Hassan who are doing research on how to deprogram or de-radicalize cult members. So Stephen Hassan was famously in a cult in the 70s, and he was one of the main people way up high on the ladder. And then his family gave him an intervention, and he was very dismissive. He blew up in anger and he left. But a few weeks later, they interventioned him again, and then after the second or third time, he was just in his car one day driving, and it just kind of
Mm.
washed over him. He's like, this is all wrong. My family is all right. And so the way I would describe that scenario, it's not that Stephen Hassan's brain sort of like maybe went up and down all the things that he thought he believed and decided that they were untrue because of evidence here and there. It was that by leaving those conspiratorial beliefs and rather believing what his family believed, it would forge a more important connection with people. And I think all that happens subconsciously. But
Mm.
I honestly think that's why we believe what we believe. We're not making like awesome calculations about what is true based on what we perceive in the world. It's kind of what we stand to gain and to benefit by adopting those beliefs.
Mm.
So a great example is someone who's a part of a church or a ministry. I mean, you don't have to truly believe that animals talked during the time of Jesus. But if you go to church every Sunday and you nod your head and you kneel and you pray, and when someone asks you, yeah, of course I believe in the resurrection. I mean, those things aren't based off of a steely calculation of how true it could possibly be, what happened 2,000 years ago. It's this incredible social benefit that you're getting. You're getting all these people, not only in your church, in your diocese, but Christians around the world who now you feel connected to them. You assume that they like have your back if like stuff gets weird, and that you're all speaking in the same language. So that's like interpersonally. That's how I think about that. But
Can I ask on
more,
that, Brent? Well,
yeah,
just
hit
on
me,
that,
hit me.
is there a possibility then that they're right for them, right? Like,
Mhm.
if all those social benefits and all the thing we're saying come from, and let's just stick with the example of going to church,
Mhm.
um, and let's just say in this hypothetical that leads them to a belief of like, I don't need to be that curious. I just accept the things I accept because there's so much benefit for me to be had in it. If
Mhm.
they've been somewhat thoughtful about that and have made the decision that, yeah, that's actually more important to me, that's what I value, that makes my life better, are we okay with that? And I mean that quite literally and genuinely. Like, if that's their decision, can we say that that's objectively wrong and that's the math is off in that? Or is it
Mhm.
possible that for them, the math actually checks out and they're doing exactly what they should be doing in their life?
Yeah, we can say that it's wrong, actually. This is what I believe anyway.
Sure,
So let's take an extreme example of what you're talking about. Let's take Osama bin Laden.
sure.
So he definitely had his beliefs, and he's one of the most pious believers of extreme thought that I ever remember learning about. I mean, he was famously not corrupt. He lived very simply, even though his family had millions and millions of dollars.
Mm.
He could have lived lavishly, he could have done the yachts and private jets life, but he didn't because of how firmly he believed that the United States was the root of all evil, and that its support for monarchs in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and across the Middle East, they were really making the Middle East a worse place. And like he may not have been totally wrong about that, but he, instead of going about having a normal life, maybe becoming working in construction with his father, or becoming an architect or a doctor, I mean, he became an extremist financer, and then the most famous terrorist in human civilization. And so he's sitting in a cave in Afghanistan, and because of how strongly he believes what he believes, he hires Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to recruit 20 hijackers to fly planes into our biggest cities and kill lots of us. And so yes, what he believed gratified him, and his quote unquote success on 9/11, I'm sure, was intensely gratifying for him and everyone around him. But now you've got to take that idea out to like a society wide perspective. That type of thing cannot happen to run a society effectively, especially a liberal one where we're all trying to be treated equal in front of the law and in front of each other. It doesn't work. If you have a society with 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 Osama bin Ladens, you suddenly have chaos, war, no one has stability, and no one can live the way they want to. So the stronger and the more influential somebody like him gets, the less free and the less good everyone else's relationships and lives become. So
Mm.
that's what makes his belief and the beliefs of conspiracy theorists and those who follow sort of reactionary politics in the and live in the comment threads and Twitter, that's what makes their belief wrong.
Mm. Yeah, there's something in that which is delicate but important to explore, I think. So maybe as we round this out, we'll focus on this. How we I'm gonna just say words here and we'll see where it goes
Yeah,
because I'm processing myself a little bit.
do it.
So you kind of had a statement in there that I think is a really important statement, both because it speaks to the importance of curiosity and humility and now you practicing what you preach, but also for what I'm about to say. So you said his view about the US's impact on the Middle East. Maybe there's some truth to it. Maybe we were
Mm,
causing some problems there. I think there's probably a case we made that in some degree that we were, right? Most situations are more complex than that. So how do we think about it? Because I can imagine somebody who sympathizes with Osama bin Laden, or just in general, that belief that society today, the quote unquote functioning society that doesn't allow somebody like Osama bin Laden to exist, which a lot of people very logically would say is a good thing, has its own flaws, right? The system that we have in place, which is for the world and for the history of the world, is relatively liberal. It still has its problems, right? There are still people with too much power who are exploiting other people. There's all sorts of issues. We have social issues, other things. So somebody could say, like, well, it's an illusion. The idea that Osama bin Laden can't exist, or at least that mentality can't exist because it doesn't allow society to function the way it should. Society never functions the way it should. And
mhm,
that doesn't make what he did okay by any means, obviously, but it opens the door to say, how do we objectively say this is right, this is wrong, when there's a lot of wrong in all of it, possibly, right? Kind of following that thread, how do we think about that? Like, are we saying that there's an objective goodness to a more liberal, open society where we value everybody's freedom and that we need to do whatever it takes to get to that point?
mhm,
And is it even feasible to ever actually get to that point, though? Because a lot of people would argue
mhm,
today we're not actually there. So what are we really
mhm.
protecting?